So we're gonna learn how to make a histogram in Excel. The example that I have here are a bunch of final grades from one semester, real or not real, and I want to make a histogram to see the distribution of grades in this class. In order to make that histogram, if you watch the video, we need to decide what our scale is going to be, what our bin size is going to be, what our range is going to be. So I'm just going to, there's two ways that you can find the minimum and the maximum value. You can just look through these numbers, but it's going to be a lot of numbers. You can clearly see there's one, that there's your maximum value. But there's two ways that we can determine the minimum and the maximum value. So I'm going to select all of these, I'm going to select all of my values, and I'm going to use the sort function. So here, if you go to data, you should have a sort function here. So if I go to sort A to Z, you can see I selected that final grades because it's going to label that column as final grades. It's not actually going to keep that name in the part of the data that gets sorted. So I'm going to sort this based on values, and I want it to go from largest to smallest. And now it'll arrange everything. So you can see my highest grade is 100.53 and my lowest grade is 42.55. So what this tells me is I don't need to start binning my data at 0. I can start binning my data at 40, and then I'll have a much better picture where I fill the space in the figure. The other way that you can find the highest and the lowest value is to use the max and min functions. So if I use equals max and then select my data range, okay, then that's going to return the highest value. If I do equals min and select the data range, then it'll return the lowest value. So even if these aren't sorted, right, you can figure out what your range is going to be. Okay, so this is the max and this is the min. All right. So in order to make our histogram, we need to decide how to bin our data. What are those categories, those continuous categories, going to be? So I'm going to make a bin range, right? And you might have to do this a couple of different ways depending on what you get, right? So the natural bin range for grades like this might be tens of percents, right? So I have 0 to 10%, 10 to 20%, 20 to 30%, and we can do that. I would start here at 0% and then do 10% and then 20%. Here's a little Excel trick. If you start a pattern and then select the whole pattern and copy that down, it will copy the pattern. So you can see now I've got the whole pattern there. So you don't have to type it all out, especially if your bin range is going to be, 60 points or something. And then I can use that bin range to make a histogram. Let's choose a different bin range to start with, just to see the difference between these two things. So maybe I do 0%, 0%, 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100%. Okay, so this might give us an idea of like quartiles, like how many people are in each quartile, and maybe that's useful, but we'll look at the data from that and maybe it's not useful. So how we're going to do a histogram is we're going to go back to that data tab where you found all the statistical tests, do the same data analysis option, and now right under the F test there's a histogram function. So you're going to select the histogram function and you are going to select the input data range, the bin range, and the output data range. So my input data range is the actual data, the grades that I have here. Okay, so that's all my grades. The bin range are going to be right here. What is the width of my bin, or the width of my column? Okay. And then my output range right now, I'm going to put this one right next to this set of bin range. I'm going to say OK. It's going to calculate that for me. And now it's going to give me the bin, the frequency, and more, right? It's going to tell me there's one that's over 100%. So we could have gone to like 150 and see how many people are there. And then when you plot this, right, we are just going to plot this as a column chart. So in the tutorial video, they did say there shouldn't be any spaces between these bins, but because we are, like, there's not space, right? The range here is from 75 to 100% or from 50 to 75%. It is a continuous data series, but it is not, we're not plotting it that way. So that's the only difference here. So I'm going to select my horizontal category axis. Okay, and it's going to, okay, so we don't have any that are, this is from 25 to 50, from 50 to 75, from 75 to 100. So we could type in that range here just to make it more clear what's happening. But this particular graph doesn't look very useful, maybe, okay, that it ramps up that way. So let's try this other bin range. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my data tab, go to data analysis, do a new histogram. I've got the same input range, so I'm not going to worry about that, but my bin range is going to be different now. It's going to be finer, okay? And my output range, I'm going to put this next to this bin range here, okay? And okay, it's going to think about that for a second. All right, so now you can see, right, that down here, I don't have any data. And this one is reading 40 to 50, so what we have is the upper limit. Excel takes it as the upper limit. So I'm going to just select this data set here, and now I'm going to plot that data set. Insert a column chart, okay, just like that. And you can see there's a better distribution where you can see finer differences between things. So I'm going to select my data. I'm going to choose my axis categories. There we go. Okay. Okay, so this is 90 to 100. This is 80 to 90. So what's listed here is the upper limit of that range. And again, there is technically no gap between these as the video indicated, but we're plotting this as a column chart, and so that's Excel's default. We can change what that looks like up here if you have different options, and you might be able to increase the width of that bar so that it is wider and they're closer to each other, right? It could be something like that. But that's how you make a histogram in Excel. Choosing the right bin range to make your data meaningful is sometimes hard to do. You might have a couple of tries in order to get it right.